Open your ears and lube up your butthole. It's time for the What Do We Call It podcast. Now, here's your host. It's Jmann. Welcome to the What Do We Call It podcast. I'm Jmann.
I'm number one fan, Tim.
Children in the United States learn that Christopher Columbus discovered America in 1492.
Number one fan, Tim. Who discovered America?
That would be a gentleman last name Amerigo, but I can't remember his first name.
Vespucci is his last name.
It's
It's who the country is named for. But elementary school teachers the nation over would have you believe that Christopher Columbus discovered America.
No, he discovered the West Indies.
Correct. Why the fuck did they always teach us growing up that he discovered America?
Because his name sounds so patriotic and somewhat gay. Christopher, hello, Columbus, come here.
Hi.
I never thought of it like that.
Okay, I guess I'm referring to a movie.
He was
I
a
watched long time
sailor,
ago.
though. He was a silly sailor.
Well, there was a movie I was watching with my dad a long time ago. Don't know what it's called. Didn't see the whole thing, but it was like a spoof on Columbus coming over and discovering America, and it was different, very different. To get into it would take forever, but
Did it star Gene Wilder?
no. But there were a couple of gay guys on the ship and whatnot, and there was a cross-dresser on there.
What?
A girl dressed as a guy for whatever reason, and just different.
Oh. Well, I was at my parents' house last night, and for some reason Columbus came up, and I said to the Jews, I said, Columbus is not the hero they would have you believe he is. And here's my mom, oh, don't tell her that. I'm like, Columbus was a bastard. All he did was kick the ball down the street and get it rolling on Native American genocide.
That is the way to look at it. Yes.
And then my mom's like, what are you talking about? I'm like, Linda, there's a reason that they call it Indigenous Peoples Day or Native American Day, which if you didn't know, there's a number of states that don't observe Columbus Day. Of them, South Dakota celebrates Native American Day, the whole state over. There's different cities in about 7 or 8 different states, but South Dakota's the only one that flat out says, no, fuck you, no Columbus Day. So here's my mom's argument. Well, how come they say it on TV then? For the Columbus Day sales. Yes, because they're inspiring you to come spend your Kohl's cash with the name of the holiday, and clearly because Kohl's says it's Columbus Day, well, that makes up for, all that shit that happened in reality.
Yeah.
Which I think is dumb as hell. Looking at Columbus himself, he was like a topographer and a sailor who went to 3 other countries to get funding to try to take a trip out into the ocean to find a new way to get to Asia. Because the way they were going was around Africa, and it was perilous and so long. And by the time they made it around Africa, people were getting into naval wars with different nations.
Going around the Horn of Africa, too, there's a lot of bad weather down there.
Yeah.
It's a lot of people don't want to sail through there.
So Columbus thought he would find a new way to Asia, to China and Japan. And Britain said no, and Portugal said no, and France said no. So then he went to Spain, and he found Ferdinand of Aragon and Isabella of Castile. And he told them of the riches of the West, and he convinced them to fund an expedition. There we get our famous 1492 when Columbus sailed the ocean blue, which actually they called the Dark Sea because it was black.
Really? Back then?
That's what apparently some of the men referred to it as the Dark Sea, because they didn't know it was in there. It was so deep. Some of them believed in massive sea monsters that would come and wreck a ship, kill all the crew. Some of them also believed that because you were heading away from Europe and towards where the sun sets in the west, you were going to fall off the edge of the earth.
Yeah, he inadvertently proved to everybody that the Earth was circular.
He was a firm believer that the world was round, but he also believed the world was much smaller than others assumed it was, which is why he thought that he could so easily make it to Asia. So off they set, and 1492 he landed in the Caribbean, and none of the treasures he was seeking were there.
No, he found bugs and people that didn't like him.
Yeah, well, they were welcoming at first, and then of course he realized, oops, you don't have all the shit we need, and I got to go back. I got to go back to Spain with some answers to the monarch.
Mm-hmm.
So he goes back and he has to tell them, well, shit, none of that is over there. So he goes again, and he lands in what is like Haiti.
He got lost coming here, and he's the one that named us Indians because he thought he was in India.
Well, he sets up a settlement, and he left his brothers in charge. Diego and Bartolome, I don't know, Bart. We'll go with Bart because I can't fucking pronounce it right now. Having some verbal diarrhea. He might have taken some slaves.
I wouldn't be surprised. Around that time, slavery was pretty popular.
It was a good way of getting shit done.
The Middle East, Asia, I mean, everywhere had it back then. Before we even started it here in America.
Well, he goes back with some slaves, and Isabella is horrified because she figures that these lands they find, air quotes, find, are under Spanish rule. So these people are like Spanish citizens, not property. So she makes them, turn the slaves loose.
That's not bad logic.
It's not, I guess.
And she freed slaves. Look at that.
Good for her. Good for her. Fast forward 6 years later, 1498. Motherfucker tries it again. He returns to Hispaniola. Things were not so good. The settlement that he had helped set up had been overthrown in a bloody revolt. And word got back to Spain that, the people he left in charge were gone, mostly. And the locals had overthrown them. So they sent a new governor. A new governor who found out about all the shit that was going down there. And they sent Columbus back to Spain.
Off with your head.
Not exactly, but they sent him back in chains. He was a prisoner, and he stood trial. However, the monarchs, those same two monarchs, so Ferdinand and Isabella, they showed mercy on him, but they stripped him of his title of nobility.
I was going to say here that I don't recall hearing much about what happened after he returned the second time.
Well, there was that,
That doesn't seem to be in the history books I was given in school.
The third time he found Trinidad, and then he went back to Hispaniola. So he's kind of hitting all these little islands in the Caribbean. But thank Christ, after being cleared of charges, he found a Spanish king who funded a fourth expedition west in 1502. Where he went to Panama. That's where he landed.
He keeps missing the target.
He does. He just keeps finding islands, and he keeps trying to find riches to convince people that it's okay to invest this money to send them that way. And it's kind of a fruitless effort. So the hostile natives sent him running back to Spain, where he died in 1506.
But since his journey was the first to establish a link between the old world and the new, his name is remembered.
So, he did not discover America. He never made it to North America. What he did, in fact, do, as the first European explorer coming this way, was kind of set in motion the thought process that, there's more lands to explore over here we didn't know about.
But his efforts led Europe to dominate the world through colonization and the expansion of kingdoms into empires.
So more other people are coming over here. He gets the ball rolling, the first domino to fall. So what that did lead to, and this is kind of my point of why I fucking hate Columbus. I'm not native, but I sympathize with what they went through, the Native Americans.
What they went through was total hell. And I don't want to justify it or anything like that, but I mean, who knows what the world would have been like if things had turned out differently, Had things gone differently, if nobody came over here, have you ever tried picturing what this land would be like if no one ever came over here? Or at least it was delayed, say, a couple hundred years?
Parts of the state of Wyoming. It would mainly be like parts of the state of Wyoming, I think.
I've never been to Wyoming.
Well, there were many tribal nations here, and the Spanish settlers arrived. And just like what Columbus originally set out to do, he wanted to find riches. He wanted to prove the world was round. More importantly, he got the funding from Isabella and Ferdinand because they wanted to help spread Christianity. They wanted to unite peoples under the one, quote, true religion.
Mm-hmm.
Air quotes there. So that's what the Spanish settlers came here and did.
Even in the initial stages of contact between European Christians and native Indian people, the stage was set for ethnocentrism.
It was not pretty. They came here and they basically said, hi, we like this land. We want to live here. Oh, and by the way, this is Jesus. He's your new God. They read them decrees of Spanish rule and an establishment of a Christian religion state around the nation. And it's not like the natives fucking spoke Spanish. They don't know who Jesus is.
No, they don't. Yeah, the language barrier there.
And they had no hope of understanding any of this shit.
And the attitude towards the Indians was that of Christian superiority.
And that led to just brutal genocide of those main eastern coastal tribal nations. So we're talking murder of the men and enslavement, raping the women, killing the children. I mean, all the fun shit you don't hear about in elementary
That's
school.
probably that movie that Disney did for Pocahontas. I never went and watched it because I kind of know the real story about what happened behind Pocahontas.
Yeah, I'm sure it wasn't all just they show up and then they have some minor
They had
disagreements.
friends. Ooh, no, it was some pretty gross stuff that, from what I have heard.
They hanged Indians by 13 in honor and reverence for their Redeemer and their 12 apostles.
People that know me know that I'm staunchly atheist and very angry at Christianity just because of all the bullshit that's been perpetrated in God's name. It just makes sense that I got an education in Catholic school, so I know all about that religion and all the shit they pulled, like the Crusades. And that's the thing about Christianity is they're always just like, here's Jesus. Just like,
Well,
fucking.
that's kind of what the Muslims are doing, too, with Islam.
So we have this holiday that we've always had off for school in the name of a guy who they say discovered America, who never even fucking set foot in this soil, who was a total asshat and a fuck-up at exploring, who only found the Caribbean by accident. I mean, he was keeping separate logs from the crew. He would write a personal log of how many miles they had gone. Keep it a secret. And then he'd lie and make it sound like less to the crew so that they wouldn't fucking throw him overboard into the drink because they were like one cunt hair away from mutiny on multiple occasions.
There was a movie that came out a long time ago. I want to say early 90s. It had... oh, man, I'm going to have a brain fart here. I can't remember her fucking name. She starred in Aliens.
Sigourney Weaver.
Sigourney Weaver played Queen Elizabeth. Christopher Columbus was played by that British actor. I can't remember his name either. He was in Fried Green Tomatoes, My Father the Hero. But there was a movie. He was Columbus and she was Queen. And he came over here and everything. And it wasn't like the lighthearted tale shit that you would see from like Disney or something. I mean, it was a little bit more honest to what happened, but it wasn't like completely honest. And I do remember when he was first sailing across, they were like, the crew was like, he's sailing further than he's telling us and all that. I mean, there's no way we're only this far. And I can't remember if it was called 1492.
It was called 1492.
So you remember this one. Okay.
Now that you say that, it rings a bell.
Yeah.
Well, the only reason that they didn't fucking throw him into the drink is because he convinced them, hey, we're closer than we are. Then one day, just by stroke of luck, there were some birds.
Yeah.
And they're like, oh, birds, land, cool. He's like, all right, a silk coat to any motherfucker that sees land. Well, eventually they saw land. But we know how that went now, as I've given you some hastily regarded facts that I'm so sleepy. My brain is mush. And I basically gave myself a crash course in history in the topic like a few hours ago. Because I forgot a lot of this. Fun fact, the ships, the Nina, the Pinta, and the Santa Maria of the original voyage.
The Nina, the Pinta, the Santa Maria. I'll do you in the bottom while you're drinking sangria.
Well, Pinta was not its real name. It was the slang name given to it by the crew, and technically it was slang for prostitute. Prostitute.
You know, I have to be honest, somewhere in the way back of my head is like Pinta. I wonder if that's like supposed to be Punta.
That'd be funny too, yeah. You get all this happy imagery in elementary school, and you grow up and you learn the truth, and you're like, oh my God. And I almost wish that they would stop fucking teaching that fairy tale bullshit in school now that I have kids. Like, it annoyed me before, but now it's like infuriating because they're lying to these kids, and they might come home and say, oh, we learned about how Columbus discovered America, and it's like, Jesus Christ. Do I tell them the fucking ugly truth now?
You kind of have to. Well, just put it the way you put it. Well, he discovered the West Indies, which is close to America. Technically, they're American colonies right now, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. But you just tell them the same, like, it's actually Amerigo Vespucci that discovered
Amerigo
it. Vespucci, sorry. That discovered it, you know. I mean, and it fits. It's like Amerigo. Too close to call.
Well, there was a translation of his name in another language. It is Americo, which is how they got America. It was named not by him, but for him.
Yeah.
I forget which other explorer named it for him in his honor. But with my mom arguing with me about this and telling me, she's like, it's terrible you're telling her that. I'm like, it's not terrible. I don't want her to learn that shit.
I would say don't say he's a douchebag or anything like that, but at least correct her on what he found and who actually found the mainland of America. Well, North America.
That's when I finally got fed up and I go, you know what, Linda, if you feel so passionate about Columbus Day, do me a favor. On Monday, make a day trip up to the casino and wish all the natives working there a happy Columbus Day and then report back to me with the fucking results. Let me know how that goes for you. Because I remember a few years back, big fucking Indian kid that I met through work, and I asked him how he feels about Columbus Day. I'm like, I'm just wondering, you know, because you're native. And I am against the holiday. How do you feel? He's like, fuck Columbus. I'm against that shit so much. That guy's an asshole. He's like, they took everything from us. You can't argue with that. We kind of, white people stole the fucking entire country out from them. Whoops.
I mean, it'd be better if we could say this country came about in a totally different way that didn't screw over an entire indigenous people, you know, of many different tribes and everything. But, I mean, part of me wants to take the what's done is done thing. Although I think we could still do more for them, hell of a lot more for them, but good luck with that.
Here's a piece of trivia. Do you know how Columbus Day got to be a holiday?
Nope.
FDR.
Really?
FDR, the bringer of the New Deal and the Second New Deal.
Yay.
Yeah, that polio-stricken prick in 1937 made the October the 12th, which was the anniversary of Columbus's landing in 1492. The anniversary of that became a federal holiday. This is the same FDR that enacted the Agricultural Adjustment Act, which, if you don't know, during the Depression, he encouraged farmers with that bill in 1933 to either not plant crops on some of their land or burn their crops and then slaughter some of their cattle, thus driving up the price of those goods so they get more money.
Yeah, that falls along the lines of supply-demand.
And then also at the same time, he, in the same year, decided, hey, I don't think anybody should have gold. And
yeah, we went off the gold standard around that time.
Yeah, so he took everybody's gold, said, hey, this is ours now.
Gotcha, bitch.
Civil forfeiture back in the day of the Depression.
Don't you just love the U.S. government?
Yeah, well, he was a dumb son of a bitch, FDR. I actually Googled the term, why was FDR a shitty president? And I got one hit that was 5 reasons FDR was a terrible president. It was because of the AAA, the Agricultural Adjustment Act, the gold thievery, the fact that he pretty much ham-fisted his way into getting the Supreme Court to not shoot down any of his decisions. He had a rule that for every Supreme Court justice age 70 or over, he could pick one of his own choosing. He was trying to level the playing field so that they didn't have the power to shoot down all of his ideas.
Yeah.
So he kind of maybe strong-armed them a bit. Total son of a bitch makes the holiday for this other son of a bitch.
Yeah.
But it makes you wonder. It's like, well, everybody sings about Columbus, and we have Columbus Day, but the country's named for Amerigo Vespucci. Why don't we celebrate him?
That's a good question. That's why I was never, when I heard, weren't they trying to change it here in this state to
what, Indigenous
Peoples Day? Weren't they trying to do that here, but it voted down or something?
It probably did, but I'm down for that.
I wouldn't. I mean, I'd go either way with it. Indigenous Peoples Day sounds better because at the same time, it's like, well, we're celebrating the demise of your culture, of your country. So it's like, it's kind of a double-edged sword.
Well, I mean, ultimately, what are you going to do? Be like,
You
well, here
idolize
you
this
go.
false
Here you guys
prick,
go.
or-
Here's America back. I mean, we fucked it up pretty bad, but here you go. We're all going to get on some boats, and we're just going to see how this goes.
I'm going to go put on some war paint and pretend I'm an Indian. I don't want to leave.
I just, for the life of me, I think about stuff like that and the other crap that they try to teach you at school. Which now, because you can't say Christmas. They have to have their holiday celebration.
That got snuck in so quickly. I was just like, man, why doesn't anyone say Christmas anymore? It's all happy holidays.
But you can still call it Columbus Day, even though you can't say sitting Indian style. You have to say crisscross applesauce.
I'd rather hear happy holidays or Christmas versus Columbus Day. In retrospect, I mean, like I said, just seems better.
Well, the thing of it is 500 years before Columbus sailed, there's proof that Leif Erikson led the Vikings into Newfoundland.
Yeah.
So they were kind of over here first.
But they weren't pricks, and they didn't take it over.
Well,
they had colonies, but they weren't like driving out all of the Indians.
They might have killed a bunch
Native
of
Americans.
It sounds
I'm
like
sure there was probably some clashes, but
Vikings were not nice people. They didn't just go around drinking ale and yelling "Skull." They kind of killed some people and burnt some villages and stole some shit and raped some women. And good for them. Good for them for having an early spirit of manifest destiny before we had a term for it. Yeah, you tie it all into a nation that we all live in that we're supposed to be proud of, and it's one nation under God, and that God is the God that was brought by the Spanish, that was forced upon the Native Americans, whether they wanted it or not, even though they already had their own gods and traditions and religions and spiritual beliefs. It's like, here you go. Jesus for you, Jesus for all. And by the way, Jesus is the number one preferred God of the new nation.
yeah, I ain't gonna argue against that.
It's hard to rectify all that in my mind. So that's why I feel it's important that we should maybe tell the children's something else.
I would prefer the truth.
Maybe not the whole truth right away. Like, I'm not going to tell my soon-to-be 6-year-old here, hey, by the way, Columbus landed on an island, and then he totally made slaves of those people.
If you did, you gotta have a smile. He totally made slaves of those people
Yeah.
with your thumbs up.
Wasn't that nice of him to give them jobs? I mean, he went there and made them work in gold mines, and then he left for a while and put his brothers in charge, and the people that were left in charge maybe killed and raped a little.
You could gloss over that whole part.
Yep. They hung out and they were in charge. They were babysitting the Indians. But hey, Columbus Day, yay!
I gotta find someone to watch my 6-year-old for Columbus Day.
They do have school off, and then the next day is the Juice's birthday. So maybe I should just bop into Chuck E. Cheese and be like, hey, remember you didn't have school yesterday? It's because of a Spanish guy that was cool with stealing gold and people raping Indian women. Happy birthday! So
That might ruin it.
what?
What are you talking about, Dad?
Like, yeah, you're right. I'm sorry. I left out that very important component of a man in a wheelchair who said, yeah, we should have a holiday in honor of this guy who made the slaves. Happy birthday. I'm trying to think of any other stuff that relates to this that we learned about in school.
Like things they lied to us about and we found out the truth later?
Well, everybody knows that the Native Americans were here. Not everybody likes to acknowledge the fact that we stole the country out from underneath them.
I think everybody's willing to acknowledge it. It's just, what can we do about it? I mean, do we hate the country we live in because of it? Because of something that happened 500 fucking years ago? Almost 550 years ago? Or do we just say, okay, it was a rotten start. It was a bad fucking deal for the people that lived here already. But again, like I said before, I mean, what can we possibly do to change it? We can't.
No.
And even though you need to learn from the past to avoid making the same mistakes in the future, I mean, there really isn't any other places we can go and steal from other people outside of other planets.
Well, we could probably take over Canada. They're white.
Hey, fuck you, buddy!
No, that's America Junior. We can't. We gotta protect them.
There's the Northern Territory.
That's
you
our
just
little
gotta
cousin.
get used to shitty weather and grizzly bears everywhere.
Yeah.
There's a whole 90% of the Canadian population lives on 10% of the landmass.
Yeah, it's very scarcely populated up there, but it's such a beautiful country.
Yeah, well, tell me if you feel the same way when you got an icicle hanging from your dick. So, in part with this story about this argument with my mom last night, I posted a link to a song by Corporate Avenger, who haven't been around for a number of years now, but both members of them, Spike Xavier, who went by the name Corporate Avenger, and then Adawi the Wind, they're both native, and they tried to use that group, it was like electronic punk rock, to bring attention to basically all the hypocrisy of Christianity and the plight of Native Americans. And that's when I first really got my taste of all this shit. That's what really opened my eyes. And they came to town and I went and saw them once. And I met them and Spike was so fucking cool. And he just talked to me. And I asked him about the meaning of one of their songs, Jesus Christ, Homosexual. So outside of all this, I mean, I thanked him for educating me on all the parts of American history with the Native Americans that, not that I was completely ignorant to, but not educated as virulently as I should have been. And then I asked him about Jesus Christ, Homosexual. And he told me they wrote that song in honor of Matthew Shepard, who was the gay man who was beaten to death in Utah. He was at a bar, some hillbillies took him out to a pasture, tied him to a fence, and then beat him to death. They wrote that song because of how angry they were that Matthew Shepard was killed just for being gay. And that here were these religious idiots from Utah. And it gets into the nature versus nurture. Now you've got a segment of the conservative right that says, well, being gay is a choice. Well, no. They feel it's their nature. It's what they're into. You and I could go out there, not with each other, obviously, because that would be weird. We've known each other for too long. I could go out there and try being gay. Try being gay. I could choose to be gay. I could suck cocks until my lips swell up from so many cocks. It doesn't mean I'm going to like it and stop being attracted to women. It's my nature. So, Corporate Avenger's argument is that, well, you hate gays, but God obviously created gays, right? You said your God created all, created everyone in his image. So it would stand to reason that God created gays. And there's a chance that Jesus Christ himself rolled with a posse of 12 dudes and could have been a homosexual. I didn't quite get it because I thought it was just religious subversion for the sake of offending people, but once he sat down and fucking explained it to me, I'm like, can you explain to me the motivation behind those lyrics? You wouldn't think that a guy that's in town to play a show would, sit down with you for 15 fucking minutes and just talk about different stuff, but a large portion of that was explaining his rationale behind the lyrics. So this guy, Spike Xavier, fucking brilliant guy, laid it out there for me about Jesus Christ, homosexual.
That makes sense. Can we also add to the concept, 12 guys might have been gay. He created gays because he created all. Even if he didn't create gays, they always say that God has a plan for everyone. And would it be correct to say that he made people gay because that was part of the plan for them?
I don't know, because they always play that whole, it's all a part of his plan and you shouldn't ask. It's not your place to know, which is the fucking cop-out.
Whether it be a choice or not, that's what God somehow sent you a message. You need to be gay now. Go be gay. Just turn gay.
How you fellas doing?
Just turn gay.
Just to say that God's the puppet master, you're the puppet, and I'm going to make this guy gay for a little while, and then he'll go back to liking women later or something. Like God has a plan for all. Well,
give it a whirl.
People being gay would be part of his plan.
Get out there and suck that dick. You suck that dick with everything you've got. You be the best gay dick sucker ever. My friend, she has a gay brother. And I asked her, I'm like, well, did your brother ever, date chicks or anything? No, he's always been, gay. He says he's known since he was, 6 that he was gay.
See, I had a cousin who was a lesbian. And a couple of times, I met her girlfriend. Now she's dating a guy.
Interesting.
Yeah. So I don't know what's going on there, but it was kind of a surprise to me. Because that was always cool. They were just like, oh, you're gay? All right. And then, I heard rumor that her brother came out as gay, but now he's dating a chick. So I don't know what's going on there.
Maybe somebody took him to the Bachman Family Clinic and helped him pray away the gay.
I don't know.
With the healing power of Christ that makes you no longer crave D's in your B.
But it's just, she was dating a chick, and now she's dating a guy. And it was just like, okay.
Yeah, that's the thing about human sexuality, is there's a sense of fluidity to it. So it doesn't make any sense to me that all these uppity religious buttholes are like, that's an abomination against God. What are you going to do if your son says, hey, Dad, I'm gay? You better get your ass to that clinic and you better stop that shit.
Yeah.
You just turn it off like a switch. So on this Columbus Day, and this is where I'm going to wrap it up, Monday, October the 10th, 2016, air quotes, Columbus Day. I want you to be mindful of the indigenous peoples of this nation and all of their plight. We came, we saw, we conquered, we pushed them off their land. We told them their God wasn't the true God. We tried to force them to assimilate to our standards. And by our, I mean European settlers, Spanish settlers. Be mindful of the great traditions of all the tribal nations of North America that had their entire culture stomped upon. Maybe don't go up and hug a native. You might get punched in the face. But say, hey, fuck Columbus. Maybe put a sign out in your yard that says, fuck Columbus. Maybe I should do that. I've been toying with the idea of putting signs in my yard to communicate my feelings. The problem is I don't want a news truck to roll up one day and knock on the door, and I peek through the blinds go away. You're going to get me fired.
Yeah.
Just the sign's self-explanatory. All right? Go away, Jana Shortall. I don't like your Egon Spengler haircut now. So do something. To maybe tell your kids about the fact that Columbus was not this fucking hero. And America was not discovered by him.
Nope.
And it's named after Amerigo Vespucci. Do something to honor the indigenous peoples of America by celebrating either Indigenous Peoples Day or Native American Day. Because we owe it to them to celebrate their rich culture for all that we've done to slight them. Interact with the show on Twitter at What Do We Call It. That is at What Do We Call It. You can find us on Facebook at facebook.com/groups/What Do We Call It podcast show. For the What Do We Call It podcast, I'm Jmann.
And I'm number one fan, Tim.
And that's the end.